Great. So my name is Ariel Herrera. I'm a lead data scientist. And today, alongside sharing my experience, I'm also going to detail what I believe are the top 3 skills you need to succeed in the data analytics field. So a little bit about my background. As Scott said, I started off at Rutgers University and continued my learning at NJIT. So I was born and raised in New Jersey and stuck to it for my education as well. But recently moved to Tampa, Florida about 3 years ago, as I'm a huge beach bum and also love any outdoor activity like biking or even hiking. But you can't take the New Jersey, New York out of me. I am still a New York Giants fan despite their recent loss. Um, Aside from that, my full-time job, I work for AppFolio as a lead data scientist. So I lead a team of other data analysts and data scientists. It's a property management software company. Alongside that, I have a YouTube channel that bridges the gap between real estate and technology, which I'll touch on. And I have co-founded a company called Coffee Closers, which helps investors find deals in minutes. So first, I just want to applaud each and every one of you for being here today and for taking that step to really further your career and learn in the space of data analytics. Back when I started about 9 years ago, it was a completely different landscape in terms of the skills that they asked for. VBA and SQL are mostly sufficient in terms of programming. And when it came to soft skills, light communication was sufficient enough as well. But if you go to LinkedIn today, the skills required or listed on these postings are pretty massive. You'll see information or skills required like collaboration, being a fast coder, knowing Python, algebra, machine learning, and so much more. So do you need to be an expert in every single one of these? I think it's good to be knowledgeable, but there are 3 main skills that I believe if you could be proficient on and be an expert in, you could really not only propel yourself in your career, but really thrive in it. So before I dive into what those 3 skills are, I want to see in the comments, what are the ones that you think from this list are likely the top ones that are most important? These are all great answers, and I'm going to detail with some examples through my experience of which ones I believe to be the top 3. So whether it is today or maybe in the past, possibly at some point you've been a tenant. And one of the main things for a tenant is to pay rent monthly. So you're able to live in a property that a property owner owns, and there's an exchange there when it comes to the service that is provided. Now, back in the day when it came to paying rent, it would usually be through a check that would be handed off to your property owner or landlord. But as we know today, we're in a digital era, so that usually does not occur. Usually you go to some sort of platform and you can pay in different ways. So you could pay with bank account, debit card, or credit card. Now, since there's no longer that exchange and there's a digital platform, there needs to be some sort of management that happens. So that's where AppFolio sits in. One of the ways that we do make money is through payments from tenants alongside many other factors. But in this scenario, I was asked to create a new model that would allow us to better predict what our revenue would look like for tenant payments. And when I first got this task, I thought, well, why do we even care? What is the benefit of us to actually forecast how much we're going to make off of these fees every single month? Well, there's several different reasons why, in general, financial forecasting is important. And ultimately, they're all to help to make a better decision. So one, for pricing. If we were to see that our financial models forecasted that we expect some loss in the future, maybe we need to increase our fees to make sure we're profitable. Second, hiring. Let's imagine a scenario that we have more property managers, more tenants, more units, which is great for the business, but that can incur risk. So for example, maybe there's more people paying with fraudulent credit cards or other illegal methods. We may need to hire more people because of that. So financial modeling helps in that essence. In addition, product development. Many of you, if you haven't played with already, have definitely heard of ChatGPT. And Maybe we want to utilize that and put it into our business portfolio so that property managers can quickly ask questions about their business, their units, and their tenants. But if we do this, we're going to have a development team. It's going to probably take weeks, if not months, to develop this product. How do we make sure we have enough money to do this sort of work? With financial modeling and forecasting, we can actually set aside what revenue we expect to make to decide which products we ultimately implement. So now for this project, I received the ask, which is build a financial model to forecast payments for revenue. I understand why we need it to make financial business decisions, but the next step is actually investigating what's been done. Has anyone done work in this across the firm yet? And if so, what pitfalls exist? So this is where I go into investigation mode. And I actually found there was a team that already did financial modeling, the finance team, but it was super manual. So they had a data analyst every single month provide them a spreadsheet of the last month of data. They would redo their model in a spreadsheet. And then ultimately, this took the team about 40 hours a week every single month to do. So what we did is build a machine learning model that looks at historical data to make a more accurate prediction. So for example, if in the past, the old model in the spreadsheets would have predicted August of 2023, we would make $100,000 off of payments revenue. But if they were 10% off at $90,000, that can make a big difference, especially if we're looking at a higher volume. So by being more accurate and more precise, we can make better financial decisions through using a machine learning model. In addition, not only just accurate, but we've also automated a portion of that task that was being done manually by that financial team. And now they can focus on more pressing matters without having to have this repetitive task every month. So from this story, the skill here that I want to highlight that is, I think, one of the most critical is storytelling. As you saw that I walked through the problem statement of what I was working on, why I was asked to work on it, what was done, and what was the actual impact. I've seen time and time again, data analysts and data scientists who are brilliant and come up with amazing work, but ultimately it's not implemented because stakeholders do not understand what they did and how it helps the business. So it's critical to make sure that you do have a story to tell. And you might think at this stage, well, what about going through more detail? When does that happen? So we live in a world today that we digest so much information. If you go on Instagram, you're looking at reels that are 30 seconds to 1 minute. So even though you may have 1 hour to present, usually you won't get that full attention span of an individual. So when you explain your projects, you need to make sure you start high level and become more granular as you go. Cool. So at this point, we've had the project completed, but how was it actually done? How is it implemented? And how does this relate to the second main skill you need to have to succeed in data analytics? If you go online and look up what you need to do to build a machine learning model, you'll see some similar steps where it's gathering data, preparing it, choosing a model, training, and ultimately predicting, and doing this over and over again to try out different models. So should you go away for 2 months, build the most accurate model possible, and then deliver this to a stakeholder? No. Instead, you should use an MVP approach when you're looking to complete projects. So what is MVP? MVP stands for minimum viable product. So what you're not doing is you're not building one component at a time. You're not building something wildly different than what the expectations are. Instead, you build upon the same project and constantly test and get feedback from your stakeholders. And you do this so that you don't risk spending all this time developing something that actually isn't used. So how did I do this with this particular machine learning model that was built for forecasting future revenue? So I actually started off surprisingly in a spreadsheet. I was working with the new team, the finance team, for the first time. So I wanted to build trust with them before just shoving an ML model at them. And in order to do this, I want to speak in their language, which was spreadsheets. So I noticed that their current model that they had wasn't accounting for any seasonality. When you pay rent, you usually pay first of the month and 15th of the month. They weren't building the seasonality in, so each day the fluctuations of their forecast for revenue was pretty off. So just by helping them tweak this small part, started to build trust that we could, maybe use a machine learning model that could automate looking at seasonality for us. This is when I took the second step of building the model in Python. So instead of going away and coding in VS Code where no one could see my work, I decided to put this on Google Colab where I could share it with other stakeholders. So they could quickly gauge and see the work that I was doing, and I can quickly ask them questions and comment in the code. Hey, I see that COVID had some really weird spikes in payments. Should we remove that data set? Should we keep it? And other questions like that. So I was able to get quick feedback by having visibility. And then lastly, instead of delivering just a Python piece of code, we put this into a dashboard that helped not only the finance team to be able to assess what future revenue would look like, so the forecast, but also higher level executives too, so that they can see it in a more digestible format. And through all of this, of the MVP process, I was constantly getting feedback. So meeting with stakeholders every week or every other week on the progress. So for that second skill of what I just walked through, it is, which many of you had said, being a critical thinker. So you always want to think about the most efficient way to tackle a problem with the constraints that you had. So in my case, I didn't have the availability to work on a model for 3 months, perhaps. So I had to forego certain models that maybe would be more accurate for something that would be able to be delivered more quickly and still efficient. As well, I was dealing with a non-technical audience. So I didn't want to just provide some AI model that we couldn't explain what was going on behind it. Instead, we used Facebook Profit, which would allow the team to even tweak things in the future. And lastly, another constraint is the data, and that's important to always think about. So even though we have payment data for, say, 20 years, does that really matter? It's going to slow us down in training. Maybe just the last 5 years is sufficient enough. So these are all things that you should consider before just diving into a project, which I love diving in and programming, but at times had to take a step back and really just think about the problem as a whole. So I did mention previously that I've co-founded a company called Coffee Closers, which helps investors find deals in minutes. But this journey to get here wasn't as simple as just thinking of an idea and putting it together within a day. Actually, it started about 4 years ago when I was commuting in and out of New York City, and I thought, you know what? I want options in life. And I decided that I wanted to build generational wealth for my family in the future. So I took the same rabbit hole that many people do of looking online at side hustles, passive income, how to retire early. But ultimately, everything that interested me and what I read came down to real estate. So at this stage, I'm trying to analyze my first deal because I want to get a property, live in it, and ultimately rent it out. And as I was doing this, I realized, wow, real estate really is behind than any other industry when it comes to technology. So I sorted through all these data sets, super messy, and thought if I could just help one person not have to deal with this again, it would be success so that they can make data-driven decisions. As I was creating these videos, I had people come to me and say, Ariel, this is awesome. You could do so much automation with with Python, but I don't want to learn how to program. I'm a real estate agent and I'm very busy. I have several clients that are investors. I just want to know how I can help them find deals faster. So that's where I started with making a spreadsheet that would allow someone to analyze a single property by entering some information that they find, say, on Zillow or Redfin. And I thought, okay, I've answered this question, it's done, and now I've satisfied the audience. But actually, it was a lot more questions that came after this. Next question was, all right, this is good. I can analyze a deal, but I can't do this at scale. If I'm an agent in Tampa, for example, I don't have the time to input each property one by one. How do I do this at scale? So this is where I developed a quick little app that would allow someone to download properties from Redfin and then quickly see if there's a deal. So this satisfied deal finding to an extent. But I had a lot of friends from New Jersey, New York, and they said, Ariel, I want to invest. I want to build generational wealth for my family, but it's so expensive to even buy a property to live in here. I'm looking out of state, but I have no idea about these other markets. I keep reading about Detroit, Dallas, Tampa, but have no idea where to start. So this is where I created an API which allows you to programmatically extract data to see information like demographic stats, like income, population, as well as economic data like price, days on market over time. So someone could really understand with this data set, is an area trending upwards or is it trending downwards? Maybe I shouldn't invest there. And I thought I solved the problem of location because I had the problem of deal analysis and location, but location actually was still not solved. I kept getting the question of how do I do this faster? So I started to brainstorm once again. And ultimately, to solve that second piece, I developed a dashboard in Tableau, which would allow someone to take this data set of over 100,000 rows and quickly gauge some economic stats and see what areas are more preferable to invest in because they have a lot of growth and maybe lower unemployment. So bringing this all together, co-created a company called Coffee Closers to solve automating of finding the best deal in the best location. And finally, the audience said, yes, this actually makes sense. This solves my need. And for that company I co-created, we've received funding and we're now part of a startup program, which is very, very exciting. But through that example, went through a lot of iteration, and ultimately I realized where my pitfall was and what actually matters when it comes to delivering results to an audience. And it's data visualization. I can have the most performant AI model or have the best spreadsheet of just a bunch of data, but ultimately it's not going to come across to be easily interpretable unless it's in some sort of visual format. So my advice here is whether you're developing a product like I did or a new model or even an ad hoc analysis, it's really important to have those data visualization skills. I prefer doing them in Python. There's a library called Plotly that I love to create visualizations in. There's awesome BI tools as well, like Power BI, Tableau, as I showed, which is actually free, the public version. So it's definitely important to find at least one tool that you really gravitate towards and learn it really well. So those three skills that I highlighted were storytelling, critical thinking, and data visualization. And you may be thinking, there's so many skills here. Does that mean that none of those actually matter? And I think they do. However, when it comes to technology changes, if you look at one of them listed here, it's R, which is a programming language that probably isn't as popular as it used to be, at least when I first started in the industry. I think it's important to not get honed in on one of these programming languages, but be overall open to learning others and having them more as tools in your tool belt versus being the main strength behind your data analytics skills. I think the ones that are here are the ones that really remain constant through change. And that's a little bit about my background. I'm really passionate about data analytics, so I'd love to connect with anyone, even offline here, and you could find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you, Ariel. I really like that presentation so much. And really, you have such a diverse set of experiences. So, really, we can draw a lot of value and learning from your experiences here. So, I appreciate that and you sharing that. So then I'll just kick off with a question first and foremost, just to get us started, and then we'll wait as the questions kind of pour through. So I was really interested, Ariel, in your story about coffee closers. I think it's really great when somebody can just start into something, and it's totally a different use case from what a lot of us probably have experience with. So I guess as you develop this model, I think there's always a challenge in the industry with the new adopters kind of taking on and learning the new platform. Did you have any challenges with that? How did you, go about gaining more and more adoption for the platform that and model that you developed?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at first, it was a little bit tough because we were developing something that we thought was a perfect fit, but maybe wasn't someone else's perfect fit. So, kind of like what I described before of developing an MVP framework or mindset, that's what we took for coffee closers. So, we had a set of about 15 to 20 people who were passionate about being user testers because they were so frustrated with their own problem. So we would meet with them over Zoom calls, discuss some of their pain points that they have as they were using the product, and then start to brainstorm and iterate. So I think being able to partner with others has been really helpful in that essence because it's not just me brainstorming on my own as I've done earlier when I started the whole YouTube journey, but being able to collaborate in real time and make improvements has really helped.
Yeah, I bet there's a lot of things that you kind of see through others, right? And that's kind of part of the valuable feedback that you get from testers. So I definitely 100% agree. They always ensure a higher quality end product. I know you had a diverse set of experiences. So have you always been working in data science and data analytics, or did you transition at all? And what was I guess, some earlier projects that you had to kind of build up your repertoire and your portfolio? Or did you have to maybe do like more of a career pivot? And yeah, how did you handle this kind of task?
Yeah, so I actually first started not in technology. So I graduated in business management and started as a business analyst. I took a course that was internal with another employee that they were teaching how to code in VBA, so how to automate things in Excel. I mostly took the course just to like not work for an hour, but ended up pretty much changing my whole career trajectory. I was mind blown, like, wow, you can automate things in minutes that would usually take possibly hours. So this did enforce me to have to kind of shift my career path a little bit, as well as become a little bit smarter in how I was talking about different projects that I've worked on as I switched companies. So some earlier projects I worked on was very like automation heavy, which a lot of managers like because you become more efficient in that sense. Developing the Python skills took a little bit more time. So a lot of self-learning of reading different books. I believe Practical Data Science for Business. I think that's the book. Really great book. Watching some YouTube videos, and then ultimately trying to put my work out there. So before the YouTube video, I had a small blog on the Medium, which anyone can post there for free. So I think having some public part of your work is really important as well to stand out.
What do you what how do you keep yourself organized, and what kind of tools do you use to stay organized? This one's a little bit of a twofer. I had that question, and sometimes, we can get into problems that are really tough for us. How do you stay motivated when you come across something that you really just feel like you can't really get through?
Questions. For the first part, staying organized, definitely faced that challenge early on when I was starting to juggle multiple things along the main job. Using Notion, that's a tool that's free to use, is pretty incredible. You can create documents on it, lists, share things out. I would say it's like a more advanced notepad. And you could do also project management. So I will like put dates of when I have things that are due, if they're low, medium, high priority. And then that's how I set myself up every day to kind of review what I have on task and then be able to complete it on time. For that second question, I think always having the end goal in mind. Um, so let's see, at least for the side hustle stuff, I've definitely faced my barriers of being like, man, this is taking so many more hours outside of work. I don't really see as much fruition. Should I continue it? And I've had mini breaks where when I first started doing the whole YouTube channel, I had about 6 months of going straight and then wasn't really seeing much user base. So I stopped for a whole 3 month period. I was like, oh, that was a fun thing I did for a period of time. But then just hearing people then come back to me and say, oh, like I saw that old video you had. It really helped me with my project for school, helped me develop something that I was looking to do. That was really motivating to get me back onto it again, because ultimately I wanted to help people. So now, whenever I face barriers, I try to think of that end goal that I have and that whatever barrier I'm currently facing is temporary and it's going to help me to learn so that I can apply that going forward in my journey.
What types of certificates are important in data science? Are online certificates like the ones on Coursera useless? So Ariel, just a little bit of background about us in Master School, right? We're a data analytics sort of boot camp, and our goal really is, at least for everybody here, is to transition careers from their current career, whether it be someone who's like a full stack Java developer all the way to somebody who works in a blue collar position like a plumber or something like this. So we have a really diverse set of students, and everyone's looking for certifications or some way to be kind of recognized in the industry so they can land that first job.
Mhm.
So yeah, what certificates do you see that are important out there? What training tools did you have? Yeah, appreciate any of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I think Coursera courses are useful if you can apply that immediately and do some sort of project on your own and then put it publicly. The reality right now is that we've had a lot of tech layoffs throughout the industry, and applications have become pretty overwhelming. Where we've, at least for Appfolio, we hire remotely. So we have even more applicants, and it could be within 2 days we have 400. That's not to say that this is, intimidating and shouldn't, you shouldn't apply. But I think that comes back full circle of, well, how do you actually stand out? And when I first started in my internship, we were told we were supposed to meet with at least one new person every single week, and that you should continue doing that with your career. And I've actually continued to do that, where whether it's meeting with a new person in my current organization or going on LinkedIn saying, hey, do you have 15 minutes to chat? I really admire the company that you work for, the work that you're doing. 7 out of 10 times, you're probably going to never get a response. But for those 3 times you do, then you say at the end, is there anyone else that I could talk to? And then you meet with someone else that's new. Next thing you know, you're in an applicant pool of 300 people for the same job, but you're risen to the top because you've showcased your skills publicly and you've also really showed your motivation. So I guess to answer the question, I don't think there's one specific cert you have to get or one specific learning. But if you could take what you learn and actually apply it and show it off publicly and also network in the process, it could really help you to stand out.
Were there any other good resources through your journey that you recommend we check out, like any kind of learning material or anything maybe on your YouTube channel we can kind of look at and maybe try to mimic so we can get more skills that way?
Yeah, so I actually made a recent post this month. It's a 3 part series of being able to detect if a property is basically a tear down or needs a lot of work, needs to be renovated versus not, just by looking at the property descriptions. So I have a Python notebook, so you could literally just copy and just run it. But it would be a great resource to kind of dive into NLP. So being able to model off of text data. And there's some YouTube channels that are pretty good in terms of statistics. So I think trying to up level, I think it's Khan Academy. If you can up level a little bit in statistics too, that really helps in the data science space.
Cool, excellent. Thank you very much. Um, so we have just a couple more questions that have come through. How quick would you expect a master's school graduate to be fluent as a data analyst? So, meaning becoming comfortable at first job. And what are your tips to break into the data analytics industry faster? So, yeah, that's definitely a key concern for everybody here. So, I guess maybe even in your learning journey, how far along did you really get, or maybe even how many hours did you put in before you really felt like you were comfortable? Maybe you can share with us a little bit of that timeline that it took for you, just so we can reflect on as well.
Yeah, so luckily, because I did start in the industry almost 9 years ago, there was a lot of learning on the job, which was useful because you kind of get paid to fail a little bit. But I think if you, like I said previously, for data analysts, I think it's really important to have great data visualization skills. If you can focus on one particular tool, whether it's Power BI or Tableau, and just get comfortable with it, which will probably take um, creating 1 to 2 dashboards, that could really help to go into a data analyst role comfortably. But I think also to break into the industry faster, it's, yeah, having some work that you've done publicly, but also in interviews, not just saying, hey, this is work I've done, but also really honing in on your communication skills, your want to collaborate, um, as well as being a critical thinker, because that will really help you stand out versus someone who maybe has 2, 3 years of experience, but they don't have those soft skills that are really needed to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important that you know, in this industry, right? That because there's such an important element of data storytelling, where you're really talking about, I think you mentioned it before, like engaging these non-technical stakeholders, right? Is so vital to kind of communicate your results. That's really where you affect the most change in whatever organization or whatever project you're contributing to. So I definitely think that that is a really important element. Was the API developed around Coffee Closer's web based, and was it to support clients seeking to access data within your environment or from a third party? So, yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that experience? Because that's really kind of non traditional, right? Like, how do you get new clients to adopt it? Then also similarly, it has to be available on the web. So how do you deal with all the little challenges that clients might bring forward about maybe connecting to your data set? Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so originally this was before Coffee Closer. So as I was just working on this on my own, and I thought in my head, I can't put a new spreadsheet and download it, upload it to Google Drive of the data every single month. That would just be so time consuming. So I heard about APIs, I haven't developed one yet. And I just deep dived into how to use AWS, which is another thing. If you could learn, another good start is learning about AWS, which they have a cert for data science that I've actually completed. Forgot to mention that earlier, but great certification. So I dived into the AWS services, figured out how to make this API, and then to get people to adopt it, I promoted it on my channel by first putting a bunch of content of how to get started in Python from beginner to hero. There's so many Python courses that try to teach you how to build lists by putting apples and oranges into a list and then counting them. Just not intuitive. But when it comes to practical things like real estate, I found the data to be easier. People watched the course and then ultimately wanted to use that data set. As things changed or requests came in, again, just kind of going to organization, putting that into a Notion as a to-do list of things I have to look into, and then just frequently communicating with the people who are using the API to make sure that their expectations were met.
But I did have one question about your LinkedIn profile, actually. And I saw that you also were the CEO and founder of AnalyticsAriel. Would you be able to share a little bit about your experience with that? Is that related to your coffee closers experience, or is that something a little different?
Yeah, so it's related to the YouTube channel. It used to be Analytics Ariel, but I changed it to tech and real estate because I realized it gets more searches because no one's searching for Analytics Ariel when they think of real estate, which is actually improved. But being the owner of that company, I started to take in requests, kind of like doing side contracting and working with real estate agents, some lenders who are assessing properties, as well as investors. And that was a really interesting journey of learning about these different types of problems. But ultimately, the same issue was consistent in that data was hard to get, it was hard to clean, it was hard to automate certain parts of the business. So through that, I realized that I actually don't like doing that type of work too much, because I realized the scope would just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was hard for me to just put a box on it and say, no, I won't look into that as well. So that was one weakness that I noticed about myself, of trying to always do more and not stay into constraints. But ultimately, it was really fruitful to meet so many different individuals and ultimately be able to create coffee closers from that feedback.
Are there any other kind of use cases with data science that you could think of that are good for beginners that may set them apart? Maybe they do it as a personal project, or something that's a little bit, I guess, something for a novel person to kind of pick up.
Yeah, I think forecasting is actually pretty intuitive, and also a type of model that's useful for many different companies as they're hiring data scientists. Like I showed that example of forecasting revenue. And Facebook Profit is actually like one of the easiest models to set up. And you could apply that to many different data sets. So, say if you wanted to forecast, I'm going to use a football example. If you wanted to forecast how many rushing yards Saquon Barkley is going to have for the rest of the season, based on how many current rushing yards he's had from the past, you could do that with a forecasting model. It'll be pretty unique because there's probably not someone who's done that at this moment and put it publicly. So I think reviewing Facebook Profit for forecasting would be super useful for you in the group.
Wow, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's a really great project that a lot of us could try to pick up. So thank you. Do you have any experience doing freelance work on sites like Fiverr or an Upwork? If so, how would you recommend successfully doing freelance as a strategy? I guess maybe you have some experience with that from your entrepreneurial journey. Yeah, what's your take on these sites? We've had a lot of students kind of inquire about that in the past, because I guess everyone's just trying to get experience, right? And one way to do that is maybe either kind of maybe doing it pro bono through these platforms, or even getting paid for it. So, what's been your experience like using these platforms for freelancing?
Yeah, I did use Fiverr for a little bit of time by putting some of the skill set that I have of retrieving property data. Ultimately, I made like a little app for it. So it's a lot easier and kind of automates itself of doing the work. But I do think that these sites are really important, but there's been a little bit of oversaturation in them. And there's some, I would say, business folks who are a little bit wary of how they hired the best person. And maybe they only look for someone with 10 plus reviews, right? So it's like, how do you even get started in this space? Um, well, for one, I do have a community called Tech and Real Estate. It's a Facebook group. And I try to connect people who have some data analytics skills with real estate investors that need, or agents that want to work on certain projects. So that's one avenue. Would be happy to recommend anyone here. I think being a part of data analytics groups that have a focus on business folks who need projects done is important. And if you are going to do Fiverr, just make sure that you take all the steps of putting a really awesome profile, because there are some people overseas that just slap stuff together and it doesn't look as professional. So you could really make yourself stand out by using like Canva, a free tool, to make a really cool image of what you can do. And in terms of projects that you could start working on, a lot of people ask about web scraping, to be honest, because they want to get data from the internet, data that's not easily accessible. That could be a start. And that would also help you use Python skills. And you could share with recruiters that you've automated processes and build web scraping tools, which is still relevant in a data analyst, data science space.
Wow, that's so awesome. You've given us so many good actions and things that are productive that we can follow up on. So I really appreciate that. I guess with the remaining 5 minutes, unless there are any other questions, I did want to maybe just give you a chance to spotlight a little bit of your work. Are you fine with me sharing your link tree in the chat,
Yeah,
which
that'd be great.
has all your material? Maybe you can spend just maybe 1 or 2 minutes with us, just sharing a little bit around. Yeah, I know you mentioned some of the things here on your link tree, but maybe anything else that we might have missed that we could leverage.
Yeah, so actually I could share, well, in the link tree is my blog, which also kind of gives like a little more in-depth view. Sometimes it's hard to like, not hard to follow, but in a YouTube video, there's a lot going on. You're following your eyes with the video, but also typing things. But with the blog, you kind of get your own pace of how you want to follow, how to go through some of the programming tutorials that I have. So I would definitely check that out.
Well, excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. And yeah, we look forward to speaking to you again soon and probably exploring more of your work offline. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And again, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask any question. There's never a bad question to ask when it comes to data analytics and career advice.